But it's not gonna happen overnight. It's gonna take making a choice, committing to put it all on the line to create a political revolution. And so I want to ask all of you right here, right now, text the word commit to 67760 to commit to caucusing for Bernie Sanders on February 3rd. Next, one of the best ways you can help Bernie get elected is by signing up to be a caucus night volunteer. This means caucus night volunteer. And also, make sure you sign up with an organizer or volunteer, all these lovely people with clipboards. Sign up for a shift right now before you leave. I need everybody to sign up for 4 door knocking shifts. We had a whole bus from Chicago come in today to knock on doors here in Davenport. Again, we have 23 days to make history. And I have no doubt that if we organize and talk to people we know and talk to people we don't know and fight like hell, we're gonna win on caucus night. Now, let's make it happen, Iowa. Thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you guys out there.
Please welcome now Joe Cooley.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Joe Cooley, and I'm the general manager of the Quad Cities River Bandits. For those of you who may not know, there is 160 minor league baseball teams around the country just like ours in small cities and communities. I may run a minor league baseball team, but first and foremost, I'm a fan of the game. I grew up playing baseball, and baseball has always been a passion for me. Late last year, Major League Baseball told us they wanted to take experiences away from towns just like ours at over 40 towns across this country, just like towns here in Iowa like Davenport, Clinton, Iowa, and Burlington. Choosing to close minor league baseball teams would not only be devastating to us, but to all these cities across America. You know how excited you feel, even as an adult, to catch a foul ball? Imagine what kind of difference that makes in a child's life. That takes courage, that takes dedication for not only kids to go out to parks and want to be part of the experience. They want to be out there, they want to catch a foul ball, they want to meet players. So, going down to a field as a child and meeting those players, that is an experience that you're never going to forget. These players that play at these teams are employed by Major League Baseball, many for very low pay, but they do it because they have a dream. All of us have some sort of dream, and these players want to make it to the major leagues. When Major League billionaires, owners, tried to take that away from us, that we weren't going to have baseball in these towns anymore, you know who stood up first? Bernie. You guys got it. Bernie really stepped up to the plate first, and there were over 100 other members of Congress that jumped in right behind him. Every one of them wanted to save baseball in all 160 of these markets. Next, Bernie went ahead and went right to Commissioner Manfred of Major League Baseball and met with him. That also takes a lot of courage. Bernie stood up for us, all of us, in the 160 markets. It is easy to be cynical right now, but Bernie's leadership showed me how powerful it is to really take a stance and not to back down from all these billionaires at all of these major league teams.
If you don't believe me, just ask our next speaker. She knows a thing or two about how people power can do what the talking heads say is impossible. It's my honor to introduce Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib.
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you for your kindness, and I'm so honored. Thank you. I love you all so much. You know, social justice is love, and I just feel the love in this room, and we are going to create such an incredible new America that is about all of us, and I'm so happy to be here on behalf of our future President of the United States, Senator Bernie Sanders. You know, I know a lot of you have seen so much about me in the media, but many of you may not know about my humble background. I'm thinking about the journey I have been on as a child of Palestinian immigrant parents. My father, who had to leave school in 4th grade, my mother 8th grade, and I think about my father in the 70s. Many people would tell me that my father would be on the corners, and he's the kind of guy in the 70s that would put his arm out and go, "Which watch do you want?" You know, he hustled. He's one of those guys until he finally got into Ford Motor Company at Flat Rock, Michigan, and he became part of the UAW. And you have no idea how transformative it was for my father to be part of an extended chosen family that made him feel like he belonged finally, that he deserved health care, that he deserved a retirement, that he truly, truly belonged part of this incredible country. And I think about my mom, who watched her daughter wearing her Palestinian thobe, see her daughter become a United States Congresswoman. The first in the family, to graduate from high school, college, and everything. I mean, just imagining that just challenge for my parents and finally saying, we can do better for our children. And one of the things that I want you all to know is that I had to work full time while earning my college degree and my law degree. I had to take classes on the weekend because I couldn't afford to leave work, because if I left work, I lost my health insurance. And I did that even though my parents wanted it to become easier for me. If I just get my education, if I just worked hard, it would be easier for me. But that's not how it is. You know, when I was with my son, Adam, my son is 14 years old now. When I first had my son, I would take him to work. And I'd nurse him right there at the desk, doing conference calls, answering emails, everything. And because I couldn't afford childcare. And I just remember at that moment just thinking, God, it should become easier because I'm working so much more harder and I'm getting an education. It should be easier, but it wasn't. It actually got more difficult. Adam is 14 now and I'm still paying student debt. And I can think about, again, how they said if you just work hard enough, if you just do what you're supposed to do, that it's supposed to be easier. You can stay healthier. You can live with, access to economic opportunities. And that's exactly not what's happening right now. I grew up in Southwest Detroit. I was born and raised in Detroit. And it's the most incredible, beautiful, blackest city in the country. Every corner is a reminder of the civil rights movement, the labor rights movement. I mean, we birth movements. And I'm not being biased, but we do. What I love about where I grew up is, in the part of the American story that never gets told, it wasn't fellow Muslims or Arabs that elected me. It was fellow Americans that didn't share my faith or my ethnic background, that believed in me, that elected me, made history. They said they sent me there, just as I am, unapologetically. And that, to me, is part of the story that never gets told, but I want you to know that. I want the young people especially that think about running for office, that you can run as you are and you can win. You don't have to share all these different ethnic kind of backgrounds or faith backgrounds. No, share values. Share values. growing up in Southwest Detroit, I honestly thought that smell was normal. I used to go play outside and I would come in smelling like hydrogen sulfide, like rotten egg smell. Honestly, if I smell that today, it reminds me of my childhood. You know how there's certain smells or a certain song, and all of a sudden you think about your childhood. That's what it was. And then as I got older, I'm like, this is not normal. This many trucks, 10,000 trucks rumbling through our community is not normal. The oil refinery literally across the street is not normal. And so as my community literally is the frontline community, when I tell people, you want to see what doing nothing on climate justice looks like, climate crisis, come to my district. I will show you streets where people have white crosses in front of their homes. Detroit Sierra Club started this movement that if you had cancer or died of cancer or survived of cancer, that you had a white cross. There'd be 7 homes with white crosses in front of their homes. And I was like, this is not normal. And that to me is why I cannot support the next president, not as a Democrat, not as like part of a political party, Republican, whatever. I have to do it as a humanist. I have to do it as a mom. When I think about my 2 incredible sons, I think about who can I hand their future to? Who can I hand it to that I know is not going to sell us out, that it's not going to waver, that is going to say the same thing he was saying 40 years ago? And I know you all feel it. You know, you feel this realness, this rawness about this person. You do, you feel it. I love that when he sees me angry and in break of tears, he gets it. There's this sense of empathy. Because one thing we lack sometimes is we don't lead in our country with compassion, with empathy. Because if we did, we wouldn't be selling out to corporate greed. We wouldn't be selling out to corporate interests. You know, there's this incredible legendary activist in Detroit called Grace Lee Boggs. Check her out. You know, Grace Lee Boggs was this person that believed that transformative change didn't happen in the White House, nor did it happen because somebody introduced a bill in Congress. It happened because of movement work, people on the street, consciousness awakened and saying, we deserve better. And I want you to know, for me, supporting Senator Sanders is not supporting him. And yes, there's a slogan, but it's true. It really is about all of us. It is about a movement. My God, I feel like we've already won just because he's in the race. People are talking about issues they've never talked about. They have to answer these questions. I had never heard of people saying, well, I'm not going to take corporate PAC money. Now everybody is saying it. Some are sneaking it in, people. Just pay attention. But the fact that he could do it by people power movement alone says, no matter these billionaires, these folks, and we hear it because it's so painful, how they other us, how they benefit and profit off of our broken systems. I want you to notice, if you opened up the curtain and you thought to yourself, God, the immigration system is just torn down and broken. They're caging up children. Oh my God, look what's happened in our healthcare system. Oh my God, look what all the companies are leaving. They're going here and there. I mean, think about it. Even the attacks on our labor organizing, all of it, when you open it up, it's the same people. They make money off of our broken systems. All of them, it's the same individuals, the same 1% that makes money off of our pain. And we need somebody that's courageous, that won't sell us out. I'm so tired. I'm so tired of it. I'm exhausted. I don't know about you all, but I'm exhausted about the broken promises, these little polished speeches. I don't care if he says the same thing. That's good. Not only that, like, yeah, he's as angry as me. Of course he's angry. All around him, no, really, all around him, he sees the pain of economic oppression, what it's done to our families. You know, I saw a tweet today. He probably doesn't even realize he's inspiring us. But a tweet today where he showed how just the lack of even increasing our minimum wage, how that's connected to suicide in our country. how the broken healthcare system is so connected with the emotional pain that so many of us are going through, where we're not taking care of our people, where government is not about people anymore. It's just about a few. Well, President Bernie Sanders sounds liberating to me. Of his courage and his compassion. I know what it feels like to be attacked, to be targeted because they're making you out feel like you're insane because you think a president shouldn't go to war without going through Congress. Come on. Why am I in existence? Why are there 3 branches of government if we're going to ignore one? What is the sense that we're okay with some sort of monarchy, a king-like approach to the issues that matter? My district, this frontline incredible community, 13 districts strong, Detroit and Wayne County communities, they elected me even when I said, I am going there because I know this is also about the jury that will hold this president accountable. The biggest bully that I've ever had to go up against. And I told them, you deserve better, right? Absolutely. Before the Ukraine call, they were saying, is he profiting while he's like a sitting CEO, sitting in the Oval Office? That was enough for them. That was enough for them to know that the best interests of the American people were not at the forefront. That's why we have the constitutional provisions that say you have to divest in your businesses. We all know this is a temporary gig for these folks. We don't want CEOs running this country. And so it takes that tremendous amount of courage for someone like myself, but I couldn't do it without being inspired by the movement that soon-to-be President Bernie Sanders, yes, I'm putting it out there. He makes me, and like many of you know what I mean by this, he makes me feel less insane. I'm not crazy, they're crazy. Why? Are they okay with the healthcare system as it is? Are they okay with, literally, I'm not joking, when you see what's actually happening in schools right now in my district where they don't have access to clean drinking water, why is that becoming normal? Why? When you have the Koch brothers that dumped petroleum coke on the riverfront in Detroit, thinking people didn't want to say anything about it. What? What are you talking? They dumped it illegally. This is a community that has 3 times higher asthma rate among adults. We're not insane, folks. We actually are real. We're humanist. We get it. We know we deserve better. We know that we need to take back our government. We need to make it about us. And I know, being the eldest of 14, I've been taking care of people all my life. Really. I'm a bit of a mama bear. I don't like anybody picking on my residents, on my mama, on anybody that is the most vulnerable. And I feel like he's kind of the papa bear, right? He's not going to sit by. He has these stories that he doesn't even realize are just incredible, powerful stories. And some of you maybe read about it. But as he was going through downtown Detroit with me, and I was telling him how helpless I felt about all these homes, I told him I used to go through these apartment buildings and there were all these low income. Many of my neighbors that were disabled, they were in these homes in downtown Detroit. And I said, Senator Sanders, I don't know what to do. These corporations just coming in, turning them into these luxury hotels, these luxury condos. He looked to his wife. He said, "Jane, you remember that the apartment, the one in Burlington, Vermont?" And I said, "Well, tell me, Senator." And he said, "Well, there's a guy that came in and wanted to turn this apartment building in his city into these luxury condos, what we call in Detroit bougie condos." And he said, "It's fine," but I called him up and told him, "I hope you bring candles." And he's like, what? He's like, well, the city owns the utility company. We're the ones who provide lights and electricity. And do you know that today, because he used his leverage and he had the courage to stand up to that corporate assault on his families, that is one of the most successful co-ops in that city right now. Those are the kinds of stories that you rarely hear. You rarely hear among our public servants. And this is exactly the kind of president he'll be. He will always put us first. And we all know that. Even those that may say, not sure. I always tell them, he's not going to waver and he's going to put us first. Well, yeah, but. No buts. We deserve that. We can't guarantee that with others, but we can guarantee it with someone who has been saying the same exact thing for the last 40 years. So it is truly my great honor and privilege. I am so excited about just who he is and what he represents and how much he's inspired someone like me, knowing that being in Congress is possible. I know that someone like Bernie Sanders in the White House is possible, and it's all because of your work. I give to you the incredible next president of the United States, Bernie Sanders.
Whoa! Thank you. Thank you, Davenport. A lot of people here tonight. So you're like Vermonters, a little snow and ice does not intimidate you, right? All right. Let me thank the Rat Boys for their music. And let me thank Jim Strangle for his welcoming remarks. And let me thank Bria Lott for her remarks. And let me thank Joe Cubley, who is the general manager of the Quad City River Bandits. And Joe and I have worked together a little bit, and I know this is not the major international issue. But as some of you know, Major League Baseball wants to end minor league baseball in 42 communities all across this country. You got it right. And those communities include 3 in Iowa, the Quad City River Bandits, the Burlington Bees, and the Clinton Lumber Kings. And it also includes the Vermont Lake Monsters. And why they're called the Lake Monsters is another story that we don't have the time to get into. But as somebody who, when he was mayor of Burlington, Vermont, a few hundred years ago, helped bring minor league baseball into the city and knows what minor league baseball means for the children and for the entire community, Joe and I and a hell of a lot of other people are going to tell Major League Baseball, owned by a bunch of billionaires, which made over $1 billion in profits last year, you know what? This is the national pastime. You're not going to shut down baseball in 42 communities around America. I don't have to tell anybody here that we are living in a dangerous and unprecedented moment in American history. And our campaign is about several fundamental issues. Number one, it is absolutely imperative that we defeat the most dangerous president in the modern history of this country. And it seems to me that Donald Trump is getting a little bit nervous, because you may have noticed that in the last few days, he and his Republican lieutenants are focusing their anger against our campaign, because they know what we know, and that is that we are the strongest campaign to defeat Donald Trump. They know that we will expose Trump for the liar and the fraud that he is. Now, I have friends and colleagues who hold different political views than I do. And that's fine, we're a democracy. But I have very little respect for somebody who campaigns in 2016 as a candidate who's going to represent the interest of the working class of this country and then proceeds to sell them out. You are not a supporter of working families when, as Trump attempted, you try to throw 32 million Americans off the health care they currently have. That's not a friend of working families. You are not a friend of working families when you tell the people that you are going to have a tax plan that benefits the middle class, and yet you pass legislation which gives 83% of the benefits to the top 1%. You are not a friend of the working class of this country when you say during your campaign that you're a different type of Republican. You're not going to cut Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security. And then as president, you bring forth a budget which calls for massive cuts to Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security Disability Fund. That's not being a friend of the working class. That is being a liar. And in addition to that, we have a president goes around the country every day demonizing the undocumented. We're supposed to hate the undocumented, and then as a business person hires undocumented workers to work in his resort so he can exploit them. Trump runs for president telling us that he's against outsourcing. He doesn't want to see good jobs in America go abroad, and yet as a businessman, he ran his companies in countries around the world where they were paying workers extremely low wages. We are going to defeat Trump because our campaign is going to bring out more people and have the largest voter turnout than any campaign in the history of this country. And the only way, let's be clear, Trump will be a very formidable opponent for a number of reasons. And the way you defeat Trump is talk to working people in this country who are so exasperated, so tired of working longer hours for low wages, so tired of working for 10, 11, 12 bucks an hour and not being able to afford to maintain their family with the dignity that family deserves. The way you beat Trump is to reach out to young people and get them involved in the political process in a way that we have never seen before. And I am very proud that last time around, our campaign during the primary process received more votes from young people than Trump and Clinton combined. So I think that young people and people who believe in justice, not just young people, are beginning to catch on that the time is long overdue for us to have an economy and a government that works for all of us and not just wealthy campaign contributors. And the reason we're going to defeat Trump is because we tell the truth. And we talk about issues that other campaigns choose not to talk about. We talk about the fact that we have today a corrupt political system that allows billionaires to buy elections. Now, I may be old-fashioned, but I kind of believe in democracy and one person, one vote. And that is why together we will overturn the disastrous Supreme Court decision on Citizens United. Why together we will end voter suppression in America. We will end extreme gerrymandering in America. And we will move this country to public funding of elections. But it is not only the political system which is corrupt. We have an economy which in its essential components is rigged in favor of the wealthy and the powerful. Now, we talk about it, a lot of other people don't talk about it. But I think not only is it a moral outrage, but it is an economic and unsustainable situation when 3 people in America own more wealth than the bottom half of American society. It is not acceptable that at a time of low unemployment, we still have half of our people living paycheck to paycheck. Do you all know what living paycheck to paycheck is about? I grew up in a family that lived paycheck to paycheck. When you live paycheck to paycheck and you get sick, or your kids get sick, you are worried to death about how you're going to be able to afford to take them to a doctor. When you live paycheck to paycheck and your car breaks down, you don't go to your second car or your third car. You got to figure out how you can come up with the $500 you need to repair that car. Because if you don't get that car repaired, you don't get to work. You don't get to work, you don't have an income. You don't have an income, you can't put food on the table for your kids. In America today, unbelievably, we are seeing a decline in life expectancy. Do you all know that? Instead of living longer lives, we are actually, as a people, living shorter lives. And one of the reasons the doctors believe this is happening is because of what they call diseases of despair. When people give up on life, when they see no hope, they turn to drugs, they turn to alcohol, and too often, increasingly, they turn to suicide. Our job is to give people hope, not despair. Our job is to have a government which is not based on greed and hatred and divisiveness, but a government which is based on love and compassion and bringing our people together. And I want to thank, where did Rashida go? Rashida here? I wanted to thank Rashida Tlaib for doing that exactly. What she and other members of the so-called squad are doing. is every day, because I know these guys and they're out there fighting. What Rashida is doing every day is standing up for the working families of this country, and day after day having the courage to take on powerful special interests. So Rashida, thank you not only for being here, but for all that you do. Now, the truth is, despite, what the pundits will tell you and the media may tell you, politics is not all that complicated. It is about taking a hard look at where we are as a people today, trying to understand how we got to where we are, and most importantly, having a vision of where we want to go. Where do we want to go? And in that regard, I think of a phrase, a quote from one of the great leaders of our lifetime, Nelson Mandela, who was, as you know, spent his life fighting apartheid in South Africa, existed in hard labor in jail for decades, and left jail to become president of South Africa. And what Mandela said, he said, everything seems impossible until it happens. Everything seems impossible until it happens. That's a pretty profound phrase. And what he means by that is that we are told every single day, it can't happen, you can't do this, you gotta settle for crumbs, you gotta settle for half-baked compromises, you can't think big, it just can't happen. But then after people struggle to make it happen, I want you to think back on the major changes in our country, some of the fantastic changes. Think about 100 plus years ago when workers stood together and said, we are sick and tired of being treated like animals. We're going to form unions and we're going to fight for dignity for the working class. And people said it was impossible until it happened. And you think about the women's movement. 100 plus years ago, women did not have in this country the right to vote, couldn't get a higher education, couldn't do the work that they dreamed of doing. They were defined by an establishment which said, your job is to stay home, have children, you're too dumb to be involved in politics. And women stood up and said, sorry, you will not define us. We will define who we are. We will not be second-class citizens. And you think about the abomination of slavery and segregation and Jim Crowism and all that the African American community had to go through and is still going through. But African Americans and their white allies stood up and they say, no, we will not accept segregation. We will not accept kids unable to go to the school that they should be going to. We will not accept people because of the color of their skin not being able to vote in the United States of America. We will stand together and we will fight racism in all of its forms. And more recently, we can remember this. Think about the struggles of the gay community, who were humiliated, put down. But the gay community and their straight allies said, you know what? We believe that in America, people have the right to love whoever they want, regardless of their gender. And they persevered, and they ended up getting gay marriage passed. Now, I say all of these things, not to give you a brief history lesson, you all know this. But the lesson there is that nothing ever really changes until millions of people stand up and fight for justice. And that is why the message of our campaign is us, not me. And that's not just a sexy bumper sticker. Although it is a very good bumper sticker. It is actually a very profound statement in a few words. Because what that statement understands is that real change never takes place from the top on down. It's always from the bottom on up. And what I will tell you, and I don't believe any other candidate will tell you, is that no president, not Bernie Sanders or anybody else, can do it alone. We cannot take on Wall Street alone, or the drug companies, or the insurance companies, or the fossil fuel industry, or the military industrial complex, or the prison industrial complex. The only way that change takes place when people by the millions stand up and say, you know what, this is not acceptable. We're going to fight for justice in America. So this is not just a campaign for the president movement, which tells the corporate elite and the 1% that in this country today, they will no longer be able to have it all, that this country belongs to all of us, not just the few. So what does that mean? What does it mean in practical terms? Not hard. We all know what it means. It means that in America, if you work 40 hours a week, you should not be living in poverty. Not a radical statement. And yet I have talked to, in the last few months, people right here in Iowa trying to get by on $9-10 an hour. Nobody gets by on $9 or $10 an hour. We're going to raise that minimum wage nationally to $15 an hour. Women in America should not be making 80 cents on the dollar compared to men. They deserve the whole damn dollar. We're going to make it easier for workers to join unions. We have introduced legislation which says that if 50% of the workers plus one in a bargaining unit sign a union card, they have a union. End of discussion. And that same legislation repeals Section 14B of the Taft-Hartley Act, which will eliminate all so-called right-to-work laws in this country. And when we talk about defending the working families of this country, it's not only about creating jobs, but creating jobs that pay people good wages. And that is why we're going to rebuild our crumbling infrastructure, our roads, our bridges, our water systems, our wastewater plants, our schools. We need millions of units of affordable housing in America. Let's put our people to work building that housing. And when we talk about the needs of working families, we have got to talk about education. Because everybody knows that in this day and age, young people need a good education in order to make it into the middle class. It is not a radical idea to say that today, when we talk about free public education, we're talking about making public colleges and universities tuition free. "11 years ago, against my vote, Congress voted to bail out the crooks on Wall Street who nearly destroyed our economy, gave them trillions of dollars of zero-interest loans. 2 years ago, Trump and his friends gave the 1% and large corporations $1 trillion in tax breaks. Well, if you can give tax breaks to billionaires, you know what else you could do? You can cancel all student debt in America. And we do that through a modest tax on Wall Street speculation. And when you talk about standing up for the working families of America, you got to talk about probably the issue that is most in their minds and in their hearts, and that is the health care crisis. Today in America, we remain the only major country on earth that does not guarantee health care to all people as a human right. Together, we are going to end that embarrassment. Today in America, and I want you all to hear this because we don't discuss it enough. Today in America, we are spending twice as much per person on health care as do the people of any other country. Twice as much. And yet, despite spending $11,000 for every man, woman, and child in America, we end up with a system in which 87 million Americans are uninsured or underinsured, where 30,000 people die each year because they don't get to a doctor when they should because they're uninsured. And amazingly enough, we have a system in which 500,000 people go bankrupt because of medically related debt. It is a shame. That's exactly the right word. I can understand and you can understand that if you go to some casino and you gamble away your money and you go bankrupt, that's your responsibility. If you want to get involved in some risky business scheme and it doesn't work out, you lose your money, that's your choice. You buy a house that you can't afford, your choice. But people in America should not go bankrupt because they have cancer or heart disease. That is a moral outrage. It is no secret, everybody knows it. Everybody knows what the function of healthcare today is, the function of our system. The system is not designed to provide quality care for all. It is designed to make huge profits for the drug companies and the insurance companies. Together, we are going to end that type of system. A few months ago, I took a trip to Windsor, Ontario from Detroit, Michigan. And I went with a group of diabetics to buy insulin in Canada. We bought the same damn product manufactured by the same company in Canada for 1/10 of the price that people in America pay for insulin. 1/10 of the price, and it's not just insulin. It's prescription drug after prescription drugs. We pay by far the highest prices in the world for the medicine that we need. The result? 1 out of 5 Americans cannot afford the medicine their doctors prescribe. How insane is that? You walk into a doctor's office because you're sick, doctor writes out a script, you can't afford to fill it. Okay? We have people who have serious accidents. The ambulance comes and they say, don't take me to the emergency room because I cannot afford to pay the bill. It is disgusting. It is outrageous. So let me be very clear. In my view, the function of a rational and humane healthcare system is to provide healthcare to all of us in a cost-effective way, not to make the drug companies and the insurance companies $100 billion in profit. Now, the idea of universal health care, guarantee of health care to all, is not a new idea. Certainly not something that I thought of. It's been an idea that has been talked about in this country for over 100 years. Teddy Roosevelt, a good Republican in the early 1900s, talked about universal health care. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, president in the 30s and 40s, talked about health care for all. Harry Truman talked about health care for all. JFK talked about health care for all. Lyndon Johnson talked about health care for all. Barack Obama talked about health care for all. After 100+ years of talking, now is the time for action. Now is the time, finally, to pass a Medicare-for-all single-payer program. And I want to tell you in a few moments, very briefly, what Medicare-for-all means, because the healthcare industry will be spending hundreds of millions of dollars to misinform you. So as somebody who wrote the damn bill, let me tell you what's in the bill. Medicare today is a very strong program, and it's the most popular health insurance program in the country. But it is far from perfect. So the first thing that we do is look at Medicare and say, how can we expand it? How can we improve it? So what we do on the Medicare for All is we increase benefits to include dental care. Okay? A lot of people in America cannot find affordable dental care. We include hearing aids. We include eyeglasses. And we also include home health care so that people are not driven from their home and forced to go to a nursing home. So we expand the benefits on the Medicare. What else do we do? Well, it's a 4-year transition period. First year, after expanding these benefits, we lower the eligibility age from 65, where it is now, down to 55. From 55 the next year, down to 45. Third year, 45, down to 35. Fourth year, everybody is in a Medicare for All program. You see the doctor you want, go to the hospital that you want. Now, what does that mean in concrete terms? This is what it means. It means we eliminate all premiums, okay? For you and for your employer. Now, you can call a premium whatever you want and give it any term you want. I would call it a tax to the insurance companies. All right, that's my definition of a premium. That's gone for you and your employer. What's gone is the co-payment that you now pay when you walk into a doctor's office. And then when you take a step back and you kind of look at the absurdity and dysfunctionality of the current healthcare system, you bump up against a concept, which is basically insane, called a deductible. Now, we all take deductibles for granted. I got a deductible, you got a deductible. But it is an insane concept. Because what it says is before your insurance policy kicks in, you got to pay a certain amount of money out of your own pocket. Some deductibles are $2,000, some are $5,000, some are $7,000, some are $10,000, some are more than $10,000. So what happens if you are a working class person and you don't have a lot of money in your pocket and you get sick? You still can't afford to go to the doctor because you got this outrageous deductible. We, on the Medicare for All, eliminate all deductibles. We eliminate all out-of-pocket expenses. And because we are going to take on the greed and corruption of the pharmaceutical industry and very substantially lower prescription drug prices in America, nobody in America will have to pay more than $200 a year for his or her prescription drugs. So, 2 questions that we have to ask, having said that. People are sitting there and saying, well, that sounds pretty good. Very generous benefits, comprehensive health care. And by the way, on your mind, some of you are thinking, as I get this at every meeting, what about the mental health crisis? Of course, Medicare for All covers all mental health treatment. So, next fair question is, how do we pay for health care today? How do we pay for it under Medicare-for-all? I'm not going to be dishonest with you. I can't tell you that health care, which is pretty expensive, is free. No one's going to have to pay anything for it. You wouldn't believe me if I told you that. It's not true. Right now, we pay it out of premiums. Some of you are paying, correct me if I'm wrong, $500 or $1,000 a month for premiums. Yes? Okay, some of you are paying even more than that. How much you paying? Anyone? Yeah, how much you paying in premiums? How much? 600. That's 72. That's over 7,000 a year. How much are people paying in premiums? 800 a month. 1,300 a month. You know, that's about $15,000 a year just for premiums. Okay, so that's how you're paying for it now. And then you're paying for it because you got to pay a lot of out-of-pocket expenses because you got the deductible, you got to pay for your prescription drug costs. You're paying for health care a lot. Now, here's the bottom line. The family in the middle of the American economy, kind of the average family, makes about $60,000 a year. That family pays $12,000 a year for their health care. $12,000 in an income of $60,000, 20% of their income goes to health care. You know what? That is pretty crazy. That is a lot of money. Some pay more, some pay less. But paying 20% of your income for health care is regressive and it is wrong. That's how we're paying for it today. Our proposal raises money in a variety of ways, but of most relevance to working people is the following. What we have is we get rid of all of the premiums and the co-payments and the deductibles and the out-of-pocket expense. That's gone. But what we do is have a 4% tax on income exempting the first $29,000. That means if you are that median family right in the middle of the economy, making $60,000, you'll pay 4% of $31,000, which is a little bit more than $1,200 a year for comprehensive health care. Pretty good deal. So right now, what the struggle is about is very hard for anybody to defend the current system. It is so dysfunctional, it is so cruel, it is so expensive, it is so bureaucratic. You know, everybody is fighting with their insurance companies and all that stuff. Hard to defend. This is what the issue comes down to. Do we as a people finally have the courage to take on the insurance companies and the drug companies and tell them that healthcare is a human right, not something to be making billions of dollars off of? That is really what the whole issue is about. And my promise to you is that as President of the United States, in my first week in office, we will introduce, we will fight, and we will succeed in creating a Medicare-for-all single-payer system. And I want you to know, again, getting back to the Mandela quote, which says that everything is impossible until it happens. What I'm talking about here is not radical. Please understand it. I live in Burlington, Vermont, 50 miles away from the Canadian border. When you get sick, you end up in a hospital in Canada. Anybody here know what your bill is when you leave the hospital? Zero. You go to any doctor you want. You go to any hospital that you want. You don't have to take out your wallet. You don't have to take out your credit card. It is paid for out of the public tax system. It costs 50% per person compared to what we spend. So this is not a radical idea. The time is long overdue. And when we pass Medicare for all, what does it mean? This is a country, and Rashida was talking about this a moment ago, where people are living under great stress. They are exhausted. And one of the reasons they're exhausted, they're worried to death. What happens if I get sick? I'm going to, my mother is sick, going to the hospital. What are we going to do? How are we going to pay for it? Tremendous stress on people. You got millions of people in America, including some in this room, who are now working at jobs they don't like but they're on those jobs because they have a decent health care coverage for their family. I think that's absurd. When you have a health care system that guarantees health care to all people, you can go out and get the job or start your own business if that is what you want to do. You will have health care as an American right. It's another issue that I just want to say a few words about, and I wish I didn't have to talk about it. I wish I didn't have to get you nervous. You're nervous enough. But let me just tell you this. Anyone who tells you that climate change is not real or is a hoax is not only lying to you, but even worse. They are doing a massive disservice to their own children and their own grandchildren. You know, I am not a scientist, but unlike the guy who's in the White House right now, I actually believe in science and will listen to the scientists. And what the scientists are telling us, and this is the part I'm going to get you nervous about. My wife always says to me every day, she says, you tell people these things and they get depressed and you have to go on antidepressants or something. We're going to have to hand out Prozac or something at the door. But here is the truth. What the scientists are telling us now is that they have underestimated the degree, speed, and severity in which climate change is ravaging not only our own country, but the world. That's what they're telling us. And they are saying that we have a very short period of time, less than 10 years, not a long period of time, to boldly transform our energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. And we have got to do it not only here in the United States. Guess what? We're going to have to do it all over the world. And what the scientists are telling us now, polar caps are melting far faster than they thought. Ocean is warming faster than they thought. There'll be rising sea levels, which, if we don't get our act together, will mean by the end of the century that cities in America like Miami, New Orleans, Charleston, South Carolina, New York City, many others, will be partially or completely underwater. It means that countries like China, like Vietnam, like other low-level countries will see massive flooding in their nations. What it means is that in states like Iowa, such an important bastion of agriculture for America, your farmers are going to have shorter growing seasons because of drought and extreme weather disturbances. That means the less production of food and the quality of that food being produced deteriorates. It means we're going to see more extreme weather disturbances. A couple of months ago, you saw Venice, Italy underwater. Houston, Texas underwater. Now we're seeing, unbelievably, the apocalypse which is taking place in Australia, where you have that great and beautiful country literally on fire. And we saw something at a lower level, devastating California. More drought, more fires. What we are seeing is the spread of disease because bacteria do well when the weather warms. So you'll see disease like malaria spreading beyond where it is right now. And what you will see, according to the United Nations, is with more drought, more floods, more extreme weather disturbances, we will see well over 100 million climate refugees, people forced to leave their homeland because they can't find water or land to grow their crops. And when you got 100 million or more people on the move, you're going to have real international crises. This is what we are looking towards. And yet we have a president and we have a major political party that not only is not beginning to address this existential crisis, they are making it worse by trying to bring forth more fossil fuel production. So on this issue, what we have got to do is not only transform the energy system of our own country, but we got to lead the world in that direction. And my dream, don't know if it can happen or not, is that we are going to reach out to countries all over the world, China and Russia and India and Pakistan, Brazil, countries all over the world, and say to them, say to the people of those countries, that we are all in this together. No one's going to escape it. Not China is going to be particularly hard hit by this. India is going to be particularly hard hit by this. That instead, maybe, instead of spending $1.8 trillion a year, every year, on weapons of destruction designed to kill each other, maybe we pool our resources and fight our common enemy, which is climate change. So the bottom line here is that our message to the fossil fuel industry in this country and around the world is that their short-term profits are not more important than the future of this planet. And I have been criticized for introducing the most sweeping climate change proposal that any presidential candidate has ever introduced. And it is based on the principles of the Green New Deal. And what that proposal does is create up to 20 million good-paying union jobs as we retrofit our older buildings and make them energy efficient, as we transform our transportation system, as we invest heavily in sustainable energies. Here in Iowa, you have been leaders in this country in terms of wind energy, in terms of biofuels. You have done great. Together, we have to do much more. And I'm very proud. You know, one of the things that's happening in this country and around the world is we're seeing leadership coming from the younger generation. All over this world, young people are standing up for the planet, fighting climate change. I'm very proud that our campaign has recently received the endorsement of the Sunrise Movement. In fact, tomorrow we'll be doing an event with them in Iowa City. All right, those are some of the issues. I want to very briefly touch on some other issues that I know that are on your mind, and you'll forgive me if we can't talk about all the issues. We'll be here all night to do that. But this is what I want to say. As Americans, we should be profoundly embarrassed that in the richest country in the history of the world, we have more people in jail today than any country on earth. All right, we have a criminal justice system which is not only broken, it is a racist system. That's just the way it is. So what we are going to do is invest in our young people in jobs and education so the kids do not fall through the cracks. Jobs and education, not more jails and incarceration. And that means also ending private prisons and detention centers. It means ending the so-called war on drugs and legalizing marijuana in every state in this country. It means expunging the records of those arrested for possession of marijuana. And when we talk about systems that are broken and racist, it's not just criminal justice. It is the immigration system in this country. So our view, my view is that instead of demonizing the undocumented, we are going to move to comprehensive immigration reform and a path towards citizenship for the undocumented. It means that on my first day as president, we will undo all of the racist immigration executive orders promulgated by Trump. And that means reestablishing the legal status of the 1.8 million young people and their parents eligible for the Daca program. It means ending the current policies at the southern border so that under our administration, no federal agent will ever be grabbing babies from the arms of their mothers. All of us are profoundly disgusted when we turn on the TV and we see another mass shooting. And we ask ourselves, when does it end? And it is not only the deaths that we see, as horrible as that is, it is the fear that our children have. I was in New Hampshire a number of months ago, and a woman raised her hand and she said, Bernie, what am I supposed to tell my 11-year-old daughter who wants me to buy her a bulletproof backpack for Christmas? That's how scared children are. All right. Our gun safety policy will be determined by the American people, not by the NRA. And that means universal and expanded background checks. It means ending the so-called gun show loophole. It means ending the straw man provision. And by the way, it also means that the American people have now come together in rural states like Iowa and Vermont, urban areas, New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, with the understanding that we must end the sale and distribution of assault weapons in this country. So together we are going to do everything humanly possible to end the gun violence, which is such an epidemic in America today. As a United States Senator, I am often on the floor of the Senate, and it looks like next week I'm going to be spending a lot of time on the floor of the Senate. Between you and me, I'd rather be here in Iowa, but I have a constitutional responsibility, which I accept as a United States Senator, to be a juror in Trump's impeachment trial. So I'll be there. But, when I'm down on the floor, I hear a lot of my Republican and conservative colleagues, giving their speeches. And often they say, we are conservatives and we believe in small government. We believe in getting the government off the backs of the American people, et cetera, et cetera. Well, I say to those senators, if you believe in getting the government off the backs of the American people, understand that it is women who have a right to control their own bodies, not politicians. So let me conclude. Where's Rashida? Is she back there yet? Come on up, Rashida. Is she here? Why don't you get her up? I'm a big fan of it. So. allow themselves to be divided up by Trump and his friends based on the color of our skin, or where we were born, or our religion, or our sexual orientation. When we stand together around an agenda that works for all of us, no matter what the power of the 1% is, when millions stand up and fight back, there is nothing that will stop us. That's what this campaign is about. That's what our administration will be about. Thank you. Thank you.